Hi Simulationites, it is Josh here. Just giving you a little pre-show warning that we recorded this episode on location at the Interactivity Board Game Cafe, and it was a little bit noisy. So there is going to be a bit of background noise in the podcast at moments, saying we have a special guest in this episode. So without further ado, hope you enjoy.
In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. All cultural items, from the dreams of our rodent-like ancestors, to books, to television shows, are merely permutations of the reality we think we live in. Today's age of computers and video games places simulations at the center of our cultural consciousness. A select group of us perform simulations for fun and profit, and we call them games, role-playing and otherwise. We live to run simulations. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations.
Hello, welcome back to the Simulationist podcast. We're recording this in the back of the store of the Interactivity Cafe on the 10th of August 2014.
To throw some more numbers at you, that is Interactivity at 723 Yates.
Yes, Victoria, British Columbia. Iteration 101, August the 10th. My name is Josh Levin, and
I'm Ryan Kirkby.
Ryan Kirkby is on the other mic.
Hosted with a nice backcurrent of voices, I think a nice background music is a good way of thinking about it.
Sure. Well, they turned the real music off. That was nice of them.
It's the music of life. It's a powerful beat.
Well, I was thinking nice of them because now we don't have to pay for the background music.
I think that still technically falls under free use.
I think we can get away with it. We're a small enough podcast anyways. And
then again, that's what that one lady thought when she had her kid up on YouTube dancing to some music, and the corporation said, you got to shut it down. Yeah,
well, YouTube's evolved. YouTube is changed so that now basically they do allow them. They just put ads on them and the money goes to the original creator.
Fair enough,
I think
suppose.
In most cases.
The DCMAs are still a little harsh.
Yes. Anyways,
yes.
Enough about that. Here we are, Board Game Cafe.
I'm digging it. Nice tables. We're at the Galaxy Trucker table.
Yeah,
I've never played, but Josh has told me interesting things about what it's like.
We're right in the back of the store.
Because we're antisocial nerds.
Well, no, because this is basically the...
as quiet as it can get?
As quiet as it gets. But yeah, we're just experimenting with recording on location, and maybe we'll do some more of these in the future. I don't know.
If it works out right, sets up for some nice possibilities for the GodaCon next year. And before I go any further, I want to I want to introduce a segment. I had a conversation with a fellow by the name of Dave Morris. Dave Morris.
Yes. I'm going to introduce him in a minute. I'm going to splice the interview in about now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Simulationist podcast. My name is Josh Levin, and with me I have a guest. And with me I'll introduce. It's Dave Morris. He is the artistic director at the Paper Theatre Company here in Victoria, BC. And he also teaches an improv class, which I took and had a lot of fun with. And he also volunteers. You may notice a little bit of noise in the background here. We got lots of people playing fun games and stuff because we're recording at Interactivity Board Game Cafe in downtown Victoria. And so, Dave, how are you doing?
I'm good. Hi, Josh. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for being on.
It's exciting. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So this is the Simulationist podcast. I guess
Indeed.
I told you a little bit about it. We talk about games and everything in between, life through the eyes of gamers.
Of course.
And I guess kind of your, your interests are wide and varied. But we're here because you do work at, you volunteer here at the Board Game Cafe.
I do indeed, at Interactivity Board Game Cafe in Victoria, British Columbia. I volunteer here approximately 2 or 3 times a month.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I spend Friday, Saturday nights teaching lovely people games.
So it's kind of an excuse Really, just to play
Well,
games here?
it was one of those, like, because I volunteer here, I'm now on staff, so I get discounts on buying
nice.
games, and I don't have to pay to come in and play games, so there's some perks involved in volunteering, but I do it also just because I love games. I love board games. All games, really, but board games lately have been my love of gaming. Yeah, and so I get to come in and it gives me a reason to learn new games. So because I teach them, I have to go through and make sure I know them. So I end up coming here playing games like I'm working. I'm learning all these games. I have to. Sorry, honey, I won't be home. I got to learn some games.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've played like Settlers of Catan and some of the the bigger games.
Sure.
More popular ones. What did we get in? We played Apples to Apples at Christmas with my family. So.
Fun party game.
But board games is not my top game.
No.
Like I don't know, game genre.
Yeah, sure.
But I love board games. When I do get a chance.
Yeah, no, Catan. That's a good. That's like the middle of the road kind of game. I think of like complications. Like if you want, there's like all these before Catan games, like Apples to Apples, or like Boggle, Scrabble. Party games that people have been playing since they were kids. And then you get to Settlers of Catan, which is kind of a gateway game. I think is how I like to think of it.
Yeah, sure.
Is you get into it, and all of a sudden you're learning about resource management mechanics and sort of like building mechanics, and that kind of leads you into the more complicated games like Terra Mystica or Tzolk'in or Machu Picchu. Lots of.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's fun. We just played it today with llamas.
Okay. Yeah, so I was going to ask what you've been like. I don't know. I'm sure you've been enjoying lots of different games, but does anything stick out recently? Yeah,
there's a couple actually. The Machu Picchu game is one that we've just discovered, but it's like a super old game, and it's a worker placement resource game where you're trying to gain favor with gods by sacrificing llamas at certain temples. We like to say you let the llama go, but you slit its throat, and you get to move up and sort of appease the gods. And that's been a really fun game. I like the mechanics in there are nice with how you place your workers and gather resources and stuff. It's a little different. And then really the one that I've been super into is Glass Roads, which is an Uwe Rosenberg game. He's the guy who made Agricola which a lot of people have played. It's got this cool little wheel mechanic of resources. So it's like, if you can picture a clock in your head with and it's 5 o'clock, so the big hand's pointing up and the little hand's pointing to 5.
All right.
And that's sort of how the wheel looks all the time. And then both hands turn together as you gain resources, and you either, by gaining some resources, you end up losing others in order to gain more expensive resources. It's a little more difficult to explain without the picture, but it's a really neat sort of, it makes you dizzy by playing it, because your resources are going up and down so differently. You have to be thinking 3 or 4 moves ahead. It's very, very cool. Very cool.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, I'll have to try that one. That game.
We can play right now. Want me to go get it? We're at the cafe. They have it as part of their 700 games in their library.
We could. I don't know if you want to just keep chatting for a little, and maybe after.
We'll just keep chatting,
let me see. So,
so those are the 2 games that I've been mostly kind of into, but there's also this great one, Dungeon Fighter. You'd like it.
Okay.
Dungeon Fighter.
Because I do like Dungeons and Dragons.
It's sort of a funny version of any Dungeon and Dragons type game. So really, it's a cooperative game. So you're all working together to move through a dungeon, and each of us have different characters who have different special powers and stuff. Like a Dungeons and Dragons type game, except how you fight monsters is the board is a target. And on the target is different numbers, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, for damage that you deal. And how you deal damage is by throwing dice at the table. And they have to bounce off of the table and land on the target. And wherever it lands is how much damage you deal. So it's kind of the fun, it's like a Dungeons and Dragons type game, but it's this ridiculous mechanic of throwing dice, and sometimes you have to bounce the dice off your forehead or throw it off of your elbow or under your leg, all these kind of silly, ridiculous things. It's very funny.
Sounds like the kind of game that if you were having a night of indulging in alcohol or substances, you could have a bit of fun with that.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a fun game than it is like a strategy try to win game.
Yeah. Oh, and I wanted to ask you, now that it just popped into my head. Improv and board games. Do you see a lot of crossover? Do you get into character when you play a board game?
Yeah.
Depend on the game, I guess.
Yes and no. I think that getting into character is actually one of the least crossover parts. Like
really?
Dungeons and Dragons, like D&D.
Yeah.
We did a D&D improv show.
Yes.
Which I think I've told you about.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned it before on here on the podcast.
Yeah, and there's a lot of crossover between those two forms, because like in D&D you're basically improvising. You're role-playing as characters, you're making up dialogue, you're the dice determine whether something happens or not, but the rest is still, you're improvising. Whereas most board games, you're not improvising at all. There's rules, and you're strategizing, and you're thinking really far ahead.
Yeah.
So they don't really cross over in that sense of playing characters. But there is definitely crossover, just in the fact that improvisation's a lot about rules in games. So you're playing rules.
What you can do within the rules.
And
still get away with.
So I find where I use my improv skills in board games is just in being good at them.
Okay.
So when you look at a game with a set of rules, improvisers are really good at quickly learning rules and figuring out what we can do within those rules.
Ah, I see.
And so a board game is like, here's the rules for the board game. And if you want to win, you quickly figure out what you can do in those rules to win faster. So it sort of gives you like this edge in knowing the limits of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you one thing one little thing that always bothers me, but it's always there with board games, is somebody always knows the rules and they're telling you what to do.
Yeah.
And that's, you have to have that. But
sure.
At the same time, it's like that bothers me a little bit because I don't know, I think it's probably just my personality. I don't like being told, oh, do this now. Well, I want to do, I want to feel it. So, but I suppose that's just picking up a new thing and just learning how to do it.
Yeah, and I mean the best time you're going to have playing a game is when everyone knows the rules equally well.
Yeah, sure.
You know, like we were playing Terra Mystica for a while, which is a very involved board game with lots of complicated rules. And once you've learned it, it's an amazing game. If you're willing to commit days into playing a game, play Terra Mystica.
Okay.
Because you learn it first after playing 3 or 4 games, and then you finally figure it out and start playing all the different strategies. But the problem is now a few of us in our gaming group have played it a lot more than some other people.
Uh-huh.
So when those people who haven't played it as much come into play, we just sort of destroy them. Because we know the rules so well, and we're so quick and know what to do.
Do you ever play for them? Because that sometimes happens.
Tell them what they should do?
Yeah.
I sometimes do, but more as a strategy to win.
To help yourself out. Okay.
Like what I'll do is, there's a game called Puerto Rico. I don't know if you've played it.
Yes.
It's like around the Settlers of Catan gateway games.
Yeah.
And it's got this, and what I'll do in that game is I'll tell people what they should do. I'll tell them what their best move is, their actual best move. Just so they know that that's their best move, and then they do it, which is good for them. But it's also good for me, because now I know what everyone's going to do, and I can plan my game around that.
Oh, okay.
It gives me allows me to look 3 or 4 moves into the head because I can tell everyone what they should do. Mm-hmm. And so I'll use it in Puerto Rico just as like a messing with people kind of mechanism.
So could an improviser tell you, throw you off or something?
Sure. Well, I mean, if you're really smart and if I ever tell you what to do in a game, don't do it. Because I'm trying to beat you. Don't take advice from your enemy. Come on.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you shouldn't, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see what you mean, though. And, that happens in a lot of cooperative games, actually. Games like Pandemic, you end up with...
Oh, yeah, sure.
Pandemic's another collaborative game where we're all working together as scientists to cure all these diseases that keep popping up. Yeah. With a game like that, you'll end up with one person who kind of runs the table, who just tells everyone what we should all do, and they just move all the pieces, and they just do it all. And it's really just one person playing a game with 4 people, or for 4 people as opposed to with them, you know?
Yeah.
And that can really ruin a game.
Okay. So, well, I guess that gets into game design a little, because, if you were designing a game, that's something to watch out for.
Sure, yeah.
Have you ever thought of, like, is there a way to spot that when you're designing a game?
I think so. I think with collaborative games, you do want to, and some have this built into the game. Others are designed in such a way that it'll never come up. Is you want to make sure that everyone still gets to make their individual choices. So a game like Pandemic doesn't really have that mechanic in there. There's one thing you can do actually, which they recommend for like medium level players, is you keep your hands secret from each other, so that the person who would run the table doesn't know what everyone has, so can't just run the table. We actually have to talk and have to decide where we should meet together, and that keeps it kind of collaborative instead of one person.
But you can't, I have this card.
You could, yeah. You could say, hey, why don't you meet me here, because I have a card I can give you.
Okay.
And, like, you can do that. So you can, and that kind of keeps it a little less one person taking over. And then there's games like Arkham Horror, which is a tabletop Cthulhu-based game, which is another collaborative game where we're all playing against an ancient one. And in there they have these interesting things where, like, just you want to get items. So you decide you're going to go to the store, even though no one else wants you to, and so you go to the store to buy items. And so they have these things built into the game that give you as a player things to want that kind of shake up the collaborative element of it. Does that make sense?
And I think I'm remembering Arkham Horror in that sometimes you want your character to die.
Sometimes you want to die so that you can get a new character, so you die. And there's also... there's an expansion that adds personal stories to characters. So if you achieve your personal story, you get a bonus. So it kind of makes people want to do their own thing. Instead of the main goal to win the game, which some people are like, no, you have to. Come on, we got to win the game. You have to do this. And they're like, no, I want to finish my story. And then they go finish their story instead. So it gives you sort of personal wants that you want, as opposed to the overall goal of the game, which keeps it from letting one person just take over.
Well, that's a good way to do it. I guess it works in a personal game. I don't know how that would work in Pandemic when you're controlling kind of organizations, but maybe somebody could think of something.
Yeah, Pandemic does that with you keep things hidden from each other. Then you have to talk instead of just tell people what to do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's neat. Yeah, when it comes to game design, I've been designing a couple games.
Yes, I was going to ask you what have you designed?
The first game I made was just kind of for fun because I don't know how trademark works very well. But I made a prequel to the game of Clue.
Right. Okay.
Right. So I'm not selling it because again, trademarked. Clue has been trademarked by Hasbro.
Yeah.
So, but the game itself is a prequel to the game of Clue. So everyone is told someone at the table they have to kill, and a room they have to kill them in, and a weapon they have to kill them with. So instead of trying to figure out what the murder weapon and place and person were, you have to carry out the murder and become a murderer. And the game is called Murder, a game of you done it. So it ends up being a game of stabbing each other in the back, and you play it on a clue board. And you're all going around trying to kill each other with different items, and like there's things where you can lock people in rooms or force people into different rooms. You rope them into rooms and stuff.
So have you played this a few times?
I played it a bunch. I made the cards. I got clue boards and played it, and it actually was amazing because the game kind of came together in my head, and then I made it, and then we played it, and it worked.
Wow. I guess that's like lightning. It
was kind of just like, whoa, it worked. I didn't expect it to work right away. I thought there'd be more problems. But the game was simple enough because it's based with cards, so it's just kind of you draw cards and play cards, and that's how you win. But I just like the idea of playing on a clue board because so many people have Clue, but they never play it because it's a bad game. It's not bad. It's just kind of boring now.
You played it, so
Yeah, exactly. And like, it's really a game of like teaching you how to make checklists.
Oh yeah, sure. This is like a logic puzzle.
Yeah, you just go around and ask people questions, and then check things off the list, and that's how you play Clue.
Yeah. So your version is more dynamic then?
Yeah, I think it's a little more exciting. It gives you a new reason to use a clue board again, and you get to go around trying to murder people, which is who doesn't want to do that? And the fun thing is that the person you have to kill is based on direction at the table, so. You have to kill the person sitting 2 to your right,
So you draw a card and it's...
Yeah, you draw a card. Everyone has 3 objective cards, and they tell you who, where, and what. Yeah. And the who is direction-based, so you have to kill the person 2 on your left or 1 on your left, which means that in a game of 4 players, everyone might be trying to kill one person.
Oh, yeah.
So we all might, I might be trying to kill the person on my right. The person sitting on my left might have to kill 2 to their right, which is the same person. And then the person on the other side of the table has to kill 1 to their left, which is the same person. So we're all trying to kill the same person, which means that you, Josh, are being chased by everybody. And so you're getting knocked out and dragged around and locked in rooms, and the rest of us no one's trying to kill us. It's kind of funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And you could... what was I going to say about it? Oh, well, okay, so if everybody's trying to kill the same person, do they work together, or do they work
all separately? You're all trying to be a murderer on your own. So we're fighting. I'm trying to stop someone from trying to kill you because I want to kill you. So it gets kind of funny. It gets pretty silly as the game goes on.
Cool.
And then I just made a new game, which I actually have here.
And we have demonstrated. We'll have to describe with our words.
Sure, we'll describe with our words. So there's a 5x5 board.
5x5, yeah.
And then there's these
checkerboard
tiles, and each tile has a different constellation on it. So Lynx or Virgo or the Little Dipper. And then there's 5 stars on each tile, trying to mimic that exact constellation. And the game is just a strategy game, and it's a simple sort of chess-like strategy game. Wherever one player has played, that tile tells you where the next tile can be played. And so every time you play a tile, the game gets the rules of where you can play change. Okay. I did a very bad description of it right there. And so each of us has 5 tiles at the beginning of the game, and we're trying to strategically place them so that the other person can't play anymore. And if you're the first, if you make the other person not play, you win the game.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a neat little strategy game.
And if you actually make a constellation, or can you make it at the end? Can you end up with a constellation?
You can, and and what happens is if, say, the Little Dipper constellation is on the board, and then I play the Little Dipper tile, that means that you won't be able to play, so I win the game.
Oh, that's the end of the game.
Yeah, that's the end of the game. So it always ends with a constellation face up that has been successfully played on the map. Yeah, it's a neat little game, and it goes pretty quick, and it's got the rules are nice and simple, but the strategy is more complex, which is
I like it. It emerges.
And the board slowly turns up. It wouldn't be a very fun game to play on a podcast, unfortunately.
I don't. Yeah, it seems more visual.
Yeah.
But 5x5. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet little game. So that was another one that I put in my head and came up with it.
Yeah.
And then I quickly designed some tiles in Photoshop, printed them out.
Yeah.
And played it, and it worked.
And now, when you design a game and stuff, and you just bring it here and just bring it to your friends and say, "Hey guys,"
pretty much. I just said, "Hey, I made a game. We're playing." And you'd be surprised how many people want to play games that you make.
Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. If you have made a board game, all of your friends would line up to play because they want to see how your game is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having fun making games, and I'm trying to look at it in. I think one of the biggest problems people have when designing games, if there's anyone out there designing a board game, is you end up adding more and more and more and more rules and make it more and more and more complex because you have these fun things you want to do. And so you start making it so that when you do this, this happens, and then this and this and this, and then but you can't do this and you can't do that. Where I think the best way to do it is start with the fewest amount of rules possible and keep it there. And then as you encounter problems, change the rules or add rules.
Or clarify.
So with this game, I started super simple and didn't make any you can't do this, you can't do that, or special rules, and played it, and it worked. And it worked perfectly fine. And now I could add new mechanics and make it a more complicated game, but I'm just going to leave it because it works. Let's call it finished. Instead of the other problem people encounter is they make a game and then they keep adding to it and changing it and trying different things. And some people will be making a game for 10 years before they settle on rules. And I would say settle as fast as you can and then change it as you need to.
Because you might have 10 different games.
Exactly.
Like maybe that first iteration is good, and then that's one game, and then the next.
And then later, you come up with another one.
Games.
Which is the other thing, is I'm not making the game of my life.
Yeah.
I'm just making a game.
Yeah.
And I can always make another one. Or I can always make another one that's very similar to this one if I want.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's been kind of fun. It's been fun to think of games and try and bring them into
does that one have a name?
Not yet. The working title is Constellations, because it's all about constellations. And
I wonder if you can work in 5 somehow.
5. 5 stellations.
5 stellations.
Pentilations.
Or stellations.
Pentaconsta. Stellations? Pentaconsta? No. Pentaconsta Church? No good. So, I don't know. What else do you want to talk about?
Oh, yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, your profession is the theater and improv. I had a question that I don't know if this will go anywhere, but we'll see. I wanted to ask about authenticity and goodness. Well, let me see. Improv.
Goodness, yeah. Keep going with that.
Does improv have to be bad to be good?
Okay. No, it doesn't. The fun thing about improv is that when it is bad, it can be good. And when it's good, it's good. So it has this, like... the way I like to think of improvising is, for people who don't know what that is, it's making things up on stage in front of people. So,
good,
improvised theater, really. Yeah. And so the nice thing about improvised theater is you have 2 stories happening at all times. You have the story that the improvisers are making up, which is, about a guy as a firefighter or whatever the story is. Yeah, and then you have the story behind the story of 2 people trying to make something up on stage. And that's always there. So when you're watching it, the audience is always watching the story, but they're also watching you try to make the story. And that is just as entertaining to them as the actual story. So watching Josh and Dave try to improvise a story about a firefighter and failing miserably is really fun for them to watch, even if the story itself is terrible and the firefighter, explodes or whatever. So there's these 2 kind of stories happening, and so this kind of ties in with you were going to talk. What was the first part of that question? Was authenticity.
Oh, about authenticity and being real.
And being real, which ties into that, because if the audience knows you, really, who you are, sincerely, when you came out at the beginning of the show, you let them see me, Dave. Hi, I'm Dave. I'm going to do a show for you. I'm going to try and tell a story. Mm-hmm. And then I do the show. They know me well enough that when they watch me try to tell a story, they enjoy that, because they like me and they want me to succeed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As opposed to if you're a total excuse me, can I swear on this podcast?
I'll just bleep it.
If you're a total you and the audience doesn't like you, they aren't going to enjoy watching you improvise, because they don't want to watch you improvise. They want to watch people who are fun and that they like.
Yeah. Well, and I've always thought that people generally like other people. Like, if you see someone on stage, usually you're rooting for them.
Sure,
they haven't said anything yet. Mm-hmm. They haven't done anything to piss you off.
Yeah.
Usually the audience is rooting for you. I suppose there are like comedy clubs or something where they might foster an environment where they're like, you suck, but I think most of the time... I always teach people who perform that the audience wants to like you. Nobody goes to a show to hate the performer, because they spend money to go to a show. They don't go to have a bad time. They want to have a good time. So let them have a good time and let them like you. If they don't like you, if they came and they're in a bad mood and they're just not going to like anything you do, there's nothing you can do about it. They're just having a bad day and they're a jerk, or they're a jerk and they just don't like you. Yeah.
And they've come to heckle you and boo you. Then they're not going to like you. There's not much you can do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can try and win them over, but that's about it. Yeah.
I'll try and tell you why I came up with the idea of authenticity, and that is I have noticed in my just consuming of culture, whether it's a TV show or something, I should think of a specific example, but I've noticed things that I feel like they're too polished, like it's too good, or it's too And I'll just, the example that I had in my head was in the Hobbit movie where they start singing a song, and it's like they all know the song about breaking his plates and stuff. I really thought that should have been an improvised thing.
Yeah.
It sort of starts out almost
it seems like a musical theater moment of like, break out into choreography.
So I don't know if, I guess you're saying yes, so...
one of my favorite moments to counter that, like, because that did feel very fake and not enjoyable in The Hobbit, right? That moment, it was like a little too fake, but whatever, it's a cute song about washing dishes, I'll let it go.
Yeah, it is,
but have you seen the movie Moulin Rouge?
I believe I did.
With Nicole Kidman and Ewan McGregor.
I don't remember much.
It's a fun movie. It's okay. Some people love it. I like it. But there's a moment where they sing the song Roxanne, and the movie is based in the Moulin Rouge, and there's all these performers around, and the way they set up the song of Roxanne is one of the characters starts telling the story about a man who fell in love with a prostitute, which is the story of the Moulin Rouge. And he tells the story, and as he plays, you see the piano player who's kind of drunk look over at him and go like, oh, we're telling a story. And he starts fiddling on the piano to tell the story. Yeah. And it's kind of like he's just started playing around with him. And then he says, there was a man who fell in love with a prostitute. And the lighting guy turns on the spotlight and shines it at one of the dancers, who then laughs, like, oh, okay, I'll play the prostitute in this story you're telling. And they start sort of acting it out. Because their characters are the kind of people that would act it out. Mm-hmm. And then they start acting out the story he's telling, and then he breaks into Roxanne and starts singing the story. And he's a performer, so it seems like an absolutely perfect thing that he would naturally start improvising this thing as they dance together. And that was one of the moments of that movie that I was like, that is beautiful. It felt like a perfect lead into that song that didn't make me go, how would they all know how to sing that song?
Well, that is always fun to see, like, actors playing actors.
Exactly.
Or performers playing performers.
Yeah. It's just such a beautiful moment. And then the song is Roxanne, too, which is a great song. So it's like, you go, what? I did not expect that song in this movie. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
But I think I know what you mean about authenticity.
Oh, okay.
And I'm a huge fan of it. I'm a huge fan of when I see a performer feeling like they're real, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and there's something about removing the people between them and you.
Like the greatest stand-up comedians.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the great stand-up comedians, doesn't even feel like they're doing stand-up.
Yeah.
It feels like Louis C.K.'s just standing there talking. Or George Carlin's just really mad and yelling into a microphone.
Yeah.
Instead of like someone putting on a fake smile and saying, how about airports? Aren't they awkward? And they feel like a stand-up comedian character.
Yeah. Well, then that can be funny if they're making fun of stand-up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Maria Bamford does some of that with her stand-up. She does stand-up making fun of stand-up comedians. And it's very fun.
Well, that's what Steve Martin did, right? That was his.
Oh, with his shticky swizzling his hips around and stuff.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure what he was doing, but it was funny. But I suppose you can fake that too. You can
fake sincerity. There's a great quote about that, actually. I can't remember who said it. Some show business guy said, the key to show business is sincerity. Once you learn how to fake that, you've got it made. It's fun. Yeah? But as an improviser, the whole art form of improvisation is based in that connection with the audience. Is based in that you and me, as the audience and performer, neither of us know what's about to happen. So we're going through the stages of the story together at the same pace. I'm not one step ahead of you. I'm on the same step as you.
Yeah.
And so when I do make a fumble, you're sitting there worrying, how the hell is he going to figure this out? Instead of worrying, oh man, this show sucks. right? Because you know that I don't know what's happening. I'm trying to. And so we try and figure it out together, and you watch as I find my way out of this mistake I made, and I called someone by the wrong name, and now I have to figure out why I called them that and how it worked. Yeah. And if I manage it and manage to find any solution to that mistake, you are so excited and happy.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think it matters if your audience is more artistic themselves? Because I find when I watch a performance. I think, and if I'm thinking I rooting for them, how are they going to think their way out of this? I'm kind of identifying with them and saying I kind of have dreams of being on stage or something like that. So if your audience, I don't know if everybody's maybe everybody has that deep down inside too.
I think they do, and I think even if they don't want to be on stage, they know what it feels like to fail and make mistakes. So when they're watching you fail and make mistakes, they're going, oh no, he's failing and making mistakes. I know what that feels like. I hope he gets out of it. And then you get out of it and they go, yeah, he did it. Unless they hate you, in which case they're like, good, you deserve to fail and make mistakes. I hate you.
But for some reason they're not leaving the theater.
Yeah. Although it does make a difference, I think, if there's more performers in the crowd. It's a great Del Close quote. Del Close, famous improviser, had this quote about how you should be so connected to your audience that if one of them leaves, the whole show should change. Oh, yeah. And I agree with that. And I think it should even be at a point where, depending on who your audience is, changes the show entirely. So if your audience is full of performers, you don't want to do a show that's geared towards non-performers and make jokes that are cheesy and silly. You wanna be aware of that and use that in your show. So make a show about performers. Or make a show where you do a lot of difficult performing feats, just so that these performers know how hard it is what you're doing. So you want to take that into account and allow it to affect the show.
It's pretty cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No. I'm trying to imagine.
It's like if you had friends over to play a board game, to bring it back to board games.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
And they've only ever played Scrabble before or Monopoly. You don't want to pull out a game like Terra Mystica, because it's not for them. That's the wrong audience for that game. You want to bring out a game like Yahtzee, and they'll be able to play it right away and have fun. And that's their game. So knowing your audience, knowing the crowd, should change what you do.
It's interesting. Yeah, I threw out the question when I was thinking of questions to ask, but
yeah, sure.
But I was going to ask, how is an improv show like a board game?
Well,
or how is it unlike?
There's that one way right there.
There's that, yeah.
Depending on who plays it, you should play a different game every time.
Oh, okay.
Depending on who's there to play the game, but
that's
there's
nice
also
about improv, you can change it.
You change it if
people are here.
We'll do a different game, right? Whereas board games, you only have the board games you own to choose from. Whereas improv, you have your entire life experience to draw upon to make up a show for these people, and their entire life experience to draw on. So the other ways they're the same. Let's go through ways they're the same. How are they the same? There's rules. So improvisation has rules. Such as the most obvious is to say yes. That's our biggest rule as improvisation, yes and. So improvisers need to say yes to each other's offers. But there's also the rules of storytelling, where we have to tell stories, which means we have to follow the rules of story structure. We have to tell a beginning and a middle and an end. We need to have characters. We need to create environments and have conflicts to make the story exciting. So we have to follow those rules. And those rules allow it to be fun. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's the way they're the same.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
In ways that they're different. Anything to add to that? You've done improv now.
I have. Yeah. How are they? We're doing the same.
The same. Yeah. Stay on the same for now.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I think of maybe I'm doing board games different. I'm thinking of. You create a world, sort of. You imagine yourself in a different space.
Sure.
There's a board, and maybe it's it is space, literally outer space, for one of those space games or whatever. You're in that other world.
So there's a theme to it, and and character types in games. You're a knight and your goal is to defeat the evil knights.
So in a way, I guess that's kind of like similar to rules.
Yeah.
We're setting up parameters.
Exactly. And we're using our imagination a little bit. There's something you do with a game. And again, if no one plays a board game, you need people to play it to make it a board game.
And you need improv.
You need someone watching it for it to be improv, which is an interesting fact, is that unlike music, where you can make music if you're alone in a room and it's just you playing a guitar, that's still music. Mm-hmm. Whereas improvised theater, if you're performing improv by yourself and no one's watching, you're not really improvising. You're just talking to yourself. And imagining things. You're not performing.
Well, you're creating, maybe, because you could set up a camera or something. And post it to YouTube.
But that's the thing with improvisation, is that it's built around accepting and making offers, where I do something and then you do something, and that I wasn't expecting, and then I have to accept it and add to it, and then you have to accept it and add to it, and we keep building. So if there's no one else there to do it with, you're just making stuff up.
Well, I suppose you're dividing yourself into two personalities and making offers to each other, and that's...
Like, if there's no one watching you didn't just make it up on the spot. You thought of it, and then maybe edited it. That's true, like a painter by himself painting. Technically, that would be improvising, because he's making things. But the fact that someone's watching you means you're making it in the moment, right then and there, with no ability to stop and think about it. You have to make it.
And I suppose, if you were just recording or even just writing, you can always choose to throw it away. And no one will see it. So.
Whereas improv, it's whether it's good or bad, someone saw it. It's a thing. It happened. Yeah, it's fun. So ways that they're different.
Okay.
Ways are different. Lots of ways. One.
You stand up in improv. You sit down.
There you go. Yeah, there's pieces. In improv, we don't have real pieces. We imagine everything.
Well, you had dice in your D&D show.
We did have dice in our D&D. I think the ways they're different is there's millions of ways they're different. But I would say the most specific one is that a board game has there's only one way to play it, and you have to play it that way. Whereas improvisation, there's an infinite number of ways to improvise, and a different number of stories and scenes that can come out, and an infinite number of themes and jokes. Whereas board games, there are these pieces, this board, these cards, and you have to play it this way, and the variation is much smaller.
Yeah. Well, I remember, in taking the class, at times I felt like that freedom is a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then one of the things you were teaching us was that go with the obvious thing. The first thing that comes, the thing that's obvious to you is the thing that ought to be done.
Yeah.
So you have an infinite sea of possibilities to draw from, but there's going to be one sort of obvious direction.
That comes to you. The one thing that comes to you, obviously he's going to be a doctor.
Yeah. But then it changes the next, somebody else accepts that offer, and then they do something else with it.
Which is obvious to them, which was not obvious to you. And now we're improvising. Yeah. It's so I think that's the biggest way they're different. But there's an interesting thing. I always say the things that make me a good board game player are the same things that make me a good improviser.
Okay, yeah.
Is that ability to look at all the restrictions that are on you and make the right move. And a lot of that just comes from playing chess, the most basic of... not the most basic, but the most
Are you
original.
big into chess too?
I was really big into chess when I was a teenager, and I still play, but not nearly as competitive as I used to. Not nearly as well as I used to, out of practice. But that ability in chess to look ahead 4 or 5 moves, but then as soon as your opponent makes a move that's different, change your strategy, is something that happens in improv. Because in improv, when you're improvising, your brain jumps ahead 3 or 4 stages. It's almost impossible to stop. You try not to, but you end up thinking, this is going to happen, then this, and then this is going to happen, which is good, because then you know what's the obvious thing for you to do. But as soon as someone does something that changes that plan that's in your head, you have to be able to adapt, throw it away, and start a whole new plan. And that's what I've learned from chess, is that I have a whole plan of the next 4 moves, You make one thing that changes my whole plan, so I have to throw my plan away and start a new one.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to stick to my original plan, because that plan's not going to fail.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's like a good life lesson.
I agree.
I mean, I did see your TED Talk.
Oh, thanks.
Improv.
The way of improvisation. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's improvisers are always we accept. That's what we accept. We say yes. We accept our offers. We accept everything that comes at us. But the other flip side of that is being able to let things go. Because in order to accept something, you have to let go something else that you were holding, you know.
Yeah.
And so letting go of things is an incredibly important skill. In life. In board games. In improv. In relationships. Marriages.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, you really do. In a marriage, you really do like... I think when me and my soon-to-be wife are about to be married on Saturday.
Yeah, well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. When we first moved into our apartment, we had this huge argument about where the dishes were going to go in the cupboards. Anyone who's been married has probably had a similar argument about where things go in the kitchen. And it was silly, and it was stupid, and all could have been avoided if I would just let it go and let them, wherever she wanted to put them, she could put them. You know, is it really that important to decide where the dishes go? It's not.
No,
let it go.
No.
Let it go.
Yeah. Do you ever do? Let's see. You do some board game design. So
yep.
You with board games and with things that you write more permanent. I know you also write a bit of poetry, and so you do create stuff that's a bit more permanent and more.
I do. Yeah.
Set. And we just talked about how improv is great because you don't have to, stick with it. You're always on to the next thing. So, what do you think of art forms that are more like permanent, more like this is how it is?
I think they're great. Yeah. I mean, I have no hatred towards them. Like I'm not like theater's the worst. I don't enjoy it as much. I find
it's more fun to do improv.
To me, the thing about being an artist, the thing that draws me to constantly create art, to whether it's spoken word poetry or songwriting, used to play in some bands and make music a lot, whether it's making games, even making board games, creating the art for it, or doing theater, has always been the creative process. The act of making something is what I really enjoy. The act of taking a blank piece of paper and filling it with a poem that's beautiful and works and fits together, and then reading it for people so they can hear it and seeing how they react to it and whether or not they like it. But once I've done that, then it just sort of becomes doing it over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
Instead, and it's just like maintenance of just
like a job.
It becomes a job. I'm just reading this poem over and over again. There are, of course, the subtleties of doing something a million times that changes it and makes it better, and you constantly experiment and explore the different possibilities. An actor on stage every night should deliver the line in a different way based on that moment. Like they should,
sure.
Even though it's the same line and the same blocking, they should constantly be discovering the line. So there is that element of it, but the major part of creating it is done, and that's the part that I love the most, which is why I'm drawn to improvising. Because every night I step on stage, it's something totally different that I'm making.
Now, is there ever an element of laziness in it?
In improv?
I know is that a bad word to say? But
no, it's totally not. Yeah, people make that concept thought all the time. I've made it on stage a few times myself. There can be, but I think you'll find that the best improvisers aren't the lazy ones. They're the ones that are constantly working on the craft and taking and rehearsing and doing workshops and reading books and studying storytelling or studying character work and learning how to breathe properly to get into characters and all that sort of stuff, which is the opposite of laziness.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you do find the ones that are just, let's just get on stage and make some stuff up, whatever. And they are never the improvisers that I admire.
Oh.
Yeah, they're the improvisers that maybe make me laugh.
Fun with,
yeah, they might make me laugh, and I'll have fun playing with them. But they're never the ones that I look to and say, wow, that's the most amazing improvisation I've ever seen. You know? I mean, yeah, you see laziness all over the place in life.
Yeah, sure.
And it's hard to admire a lazy person.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose maybe they just haven't, I don't know, speculating, maybe they just haven't found something that really draws them into working on it.
Yeah, and I guess it's unfair to call them a lazy person, because they're just lazy in that aspect of things, right?
Mm-hmm. They might do other things.
Exactly. Like the reason they aren't spending so much time working on the craft of improvisation is probably because they're also an actor, and they spend most of their time focusing on being an actor and doing auditions and stuff like that. Or it's because they, work a job and have a family, and they're trying to start a life for themselves, and that's where they focus.
Yeah. Well, no,
so when it comes to improv, they just do it for fun, and that's fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. And it's my fault for bringing up the word lazy, because I couldn't think of another word. And, I think it's out there, but I don't think of any artist as really
super lazy.
Bad.
But it's a thing people claim about improvisers is that they're lazy, and that's why they like it. Mm-hmm. But really, it's because we love the act of discovery and the act of finding things and making stuff up. That's really what keeps you doing it. Because it's frightening to get on stage with having no idea what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And if you were lazy, you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Do you find, is there a bigger demand, will audiences just come to whatever you put on, or is there, do people really eat up improv?
Yeah.
Because I feel like right now I really love improv.
So you'll go see any improv, yeah.
Well, I don't watch as much as I really wish I could. But,
yeah, I think there are people that just will go see any improv show because they love improv, or people that are fans of a specific improviser or specific company. Like my company, Paper Street Theater, we do genre-based improv, so we study genres, authors, playwrights, and then recreate that same style but improvised. Mm-hmm. And we're going to our 4th season, and over the first 3 years of doing this, we've amassed a sort of fan base, a collection of people that love our work, and will come see any show we do. And so
improvised or whatever.
They'll come see. If we do Samuel Beckett, they'll come see it. If we do Kafka, which we're doing in the fall, we're doing an improvised Franz Kafka, they'll come see it because they like us and they like what we do and they want to be challenged and they're willing to come on that journey with us. Mm-hmm. And then there are people that only come out to the shows that catch them. So when we did we did an improvised H.P. Lovecraft
cool.
2 years ago, and that show, we had specific people come to it just because they loved H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll come to any Lovecraft-related things. And so we get a kind of mix of different types of people who come out to the shows. And then there's some people who come to it just because they like improv, like yourself, who don't care about Paper Street, don't care about Lovecraft, just like improv. They heard the word improv.
I love
and they
Lovecraft and Paper Street is really cool. But
so you would have come for it. We had triple. We triple got you. Improv, Lovecraft, and Paper Street. There you go.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? Oh,
I forget what the question was.
Yeah.
Were we still on my embarrassing lazy comment?
No, we passed that. We were on if there's a specific person. Yeah, we answered that question. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, nice. Yeah. Board games, improv. I think, so back to the combination of improv and board games. Just to kind of, we can stop talking where we started. Board games, improv, authenticity. I think one of the things that I like about improv and board games is I like figuring things out. I think that's one thing that draws me to both sort of art forms. And really any game, not even just board games. Video games, Dungeons and Dragons, mind games, no, not mind games, is that sort of the joy of figuring out a problem or overcoming an obstacle, a puzzle, so to speak, where here's the rules, this is the objective, how can you get there from here with all this stuff in the way? That's what I like about games. Yeah. That's what I like about improv. Improv, the puzzle is, how can I tell a story out of all of this stuff that's happening? and my brain is trying to figure it out the whole time, and that's all I'm ever trying to do is just figure out what's happening and figure out what happens next.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing I do when I play board games. It's the same thing I do when I write poems. The same thing I do when I create anything is just try to figure out this puzzle.
I think, I get a bit of that too in video games.
Sure, yeah.
Sometimes video games are just kill every monster, but there's a lot of games with puzzles.
Yeah, and those are the games that I'm drawn to most, actually, with video games. Like Zelda is probably the franchise that has grabbed me the most, and since I was a child playing the old NES version. So much so that actually inside my wedding ring is engraved the phrase, "It's dangerous to go alone," which is kind of beautiful if you think about it.
Yeah.
And that game, the puzzle of that game of just trying to figure it out. And the very first one, I don't know if have you played the original NES Zelda?
No, I played the Super Nintendo version.
Yeah, which was good.
Or no, not Super Nintendo. No, 64.
Oh, nice. Whoa.
That's the version I played. I had a Sega Genesis when I was younger.
Oh, you missed out.
And then in college I got to try out all the
Nintendo franchises,
Nintendo, and at that time the 64 was out.
Oh, nice. But the original Zelda, you start on a screen with no idea what you're supposed to do, with a cave that you can walk into, and a guy gives you a sword and says it's dangerous to go alone, take this, right? And that whole game, there's no one giving you direction on where to go, except every once in a while you run into somebody in a cave that tells you some cryptic message, like inside Cyclops' eye, or something like that. Or Dodongo dislikes smoke. But you don't know who Dodongo is. You don't know why he dislikes smoke or what that has to do. You have to figure everything out yourself. The newer Zelda games are a little more. You have a little.
The one I played, you had a fairy.
Yeah, Navi who pops up and goes, "Hey," and tells you what to do, which takes out that sort of figuring everything out kind of game. And but the original was just like, here you go, here's the world, figure it out, and you just walk around, and if you can't get somewhere, you can't get there until you get an item that lets you cross that stream, or a raft that lets you sail over that water, and then and you won't find the secrets unless you spend the entire time burning every single bush with a blue candle until you find a little staircase that a guy gives you a bunch of rupees. And so the whole game is just about trying to find things, figure things out, and explore.
Yeah, it's all puzzles.
And that's what I love about games, is that figuring things out, trying to figure it out on your own, you know.
Yeah, and how things fit together within that game. Sure.
Yeah, and that's what I love about improv.
And now, improv, I guess the thing that I haven't got yet about improv, or maybe I'm on it or something like that, is that I always feel like there's a clock ticking with improv. There's always, because you're standing there, you're like, okay, I could probably come up with a solution to this problem if I sat down and maybe if I had a piece of paper or something, but it's very much on the spot. But I guess there's no wrong answer, right?
Exactly. There's only the answer that feels right to you. But you are on the spot. You got to come up with something.
Yeah.
Right away. And so, to me, it does that thing that I liked about playing Zelda, of figuring things out and finding stuff, and it takes it and puts it right now you have to do it in this instant. I don't have time to waste. I just have to figure it out. And all of a sudden my brain goes, boom, and figures it out.
Yeah.
And I give out an idea.
Well, I suppose with improv you could, do something in the Zelda, here's a river, I guess I have to take a break and think about which way to go. Be that character thinking about something. And
you can do that in improv, you can be the character thinking, or sometimes I'll talk right to the audience in the middle of an improv show and just stop and say, what do you guys think is supposed to happen now? Because I'm lost, I'm totally confused. And then they'll say, he's got to kill them. And you go, okay, cool. And then you kill the bad guy, so there's no wrong answer, right? And the audience is there to help you, and they're coming with you on this journey. Yeah, so it's but I do love that you're in the moment and you have nothing to do but figure it out. Yeah. That kind of bring us back around to the beginning a little bit of this podcast,
we
or
this
interview.
Sure, yeah.
What was the first question you asked me again?
The first one. Well, wasn't it how are they singing? No.
I don't remember the first question you asked. It's probably what my favorite board game was, which is...
what games have you been playing? Yeah.
Legend of Zelda. Cool. Well, I think that's pretty good. I think that's a good place to... I think we've covered a lot of stuff.
Thanks very much for being on the podcast, for chatting with me.
My pleasure, Josh. My pleasure. I'll come back anytime.
Okay.
I'll come back anytime.
I'll come back here, because...
Yeah, come play some board games here at the Interactivity Board Game Cafe.
All right, well, I guess, we're signing off. Our listeners, I guess you're sticking with us for a while, but thanks for listening. And
welcome back.
And I guess now we're back.
There we go.
And now we're back with Ryan Kirkby and me. I'm Josh Trelevin, as I always have been. And we're continuing to record in the Board Game Cafe. So Ryan, I wanted to find out what games have you been playing? Simulations have you been running?
Know what? Okay, so just between you, me, and everyone who's ever going to listen to this podcast, I got a copy of the 5th edition PHB early this year.
Oh, how did you score that?
I won't go into details. Suffice to say, I got it on the Tuesday rather than the Friday.
Did you didn't use the Simulationist, did you?
I didn't name drop. No. I was just...
Because I was thinking I could have done that.
Well, you got to have connections like me. But if you want, I think I can set you up. You can get the early, maybe early release date for the DMG or the Monster Manual in addition.
Well, I'm not in that much of a hurry.
But here's the thing: it turned out to be the ashes of victory in my mouth, as it were.
Oh.
Because I got it early because I'm a dad and I didn't want to mess up the book and I didn't want to neglect my daughter. I only wound up reading 3 pages before Friday rolled around. So while I got it early, it's not like I did anything early with it.
Okay.
But yes, I've been going through that. I've been really digging the stuff, I gotta say. Just reading the stuff, chapter 2, the races. I now want to play a gnome.
Okay.
For the first time in decades.
Did you read? You read all the races?
All the races, all the stuff.
How many are there in this edition? Like the first book, I guess.
You got your basic 4, as they call them. You know, the elf, dwarf, human, and halfling.
Okay.
And then they have 4. I think it's another 4-pack of uncommon races. The dragonborn. You've got your half elf, half orc, and the gnome.
Okay.
Oh, no, wait, 5. They got tiefling as well.
And tiefling. Okay. Yeah. So everything from 3rd and 4th, basically, from the first editions.
Well, to be fair, the Dragonborn were 3rd as well initially, although they've since streamlined them. They're no longer quite the template.
Okay.
I enjoyed reading it very much. I quite like some of the little things. Like if you're a half-orc now and you strike a critical hit, you get to roll an extra damage die because you got savage blows, buddy. Rah. So if you're going to play a person who's like a berserker, I'm big on the huge damage spikes from critical hits and all that. Half-orc's the way to go. It's a clear-cut winner because it gets you the added racial bonus. I dig that.
Okay.
I like the innovation. I've never seen anything quite like that before, and I dig how they're playing around with stuff and working with it.
So you read them all, and you settled on gnome.
Well, that's the thing is, I want to play a number of races. I mean, like
okay.
The gnomes are great, but the dwarves are very well done as well. I still have the test sheets from back when there was D&D Next. I want to play a Kender as well at some point. Mm-hmm. They're very nicely done. But they've managed to successfully distill the essence of each race down into what it means and what it's about, and introduce some fun little things about it. All gnomes, for rock gnomes, have gizmos. Give them an hour and 10 gold worth of supplies, and they can make a lighter for you.
Oh yeah.
It'll last for an hour, and then they'll have to repair it, but it'll work. They can make a little toy, whatever dragon or little toy ogre that moves around and just makes little dragon or ogre sounds, whatever.
Interesting, yeah.
And it's fun. What does that really contribute? Not a heck of a lot. But you know what? It's there, and it's something about it, and I like it.
Does it basically take their place? Because gnomes in 3rd edition could cast like cantrips. They had a couple of.
What's the thing? It's rock gnome versus the forest gnome. The forest gnomes can speak with the animals, sort of thing. It's a much more natural thing than a magical ability this time around. It's making hand motions and sounds like a clicking sort of thing. So it's no longer it's a magical ability. They're just really in tune with nature, and I kind of dig that. I like that.
Okay. Yeah.
It's some nice subtype stuff for the races I dig, and I gotta say, I think in the future when I'm designing races, I'm gonna have more subtype, consideration. It's just done so well. That's it. I've also been working around at Minecraft, finishing off a little bit of this and that. Nothing big there, though. And I got myself thinking about a lot of stuff this week. Actually, a lot of time just sitting down and mentally just imagining things I've never thought before.
Oh, well, good. Do share.
Well, it occurred to me on Friday when the PHP was officially released. It's like, oh boy, I'm 3 pages ahead of the average person. Am I really a nerd if I've had this book since Tuesday? That's 4 days, technically, I've had it, and I only read 3 pages. Am I really, can I call myself a nerd still? There was a time I would have, locked away the world, sat down, and read the book cover to cover.
Yeah, well, you're an adult now, so that's one thing.
Technically, I was an adult in 2000 when the 3rd edition came out, legally.
Okay.
So, but I was thinking about that, and then, just reading about these wonderful, strange subtypes of races and groups and all that, it got me thinking. And the more it got me thinking, the more it got me imagining like a world where these things are. And you know what? All of a sudden I remembered, what was the name of that one world in that game I played, 20 years ago? And that was kind of a hard one to track down, or it would have been if I suddenly hadn't realized, it was the Magic the Gathering game. And I looked it up. It's Chandra. It's now the main setting in there. Turns out too many near apocalypses happened in their old main center of the universe thing for their storylines, and so it's no longer the center of the cosmos. And I went to the wiki that they've got for that Magic the Gathering Salvation. I read, and I read, and I read. I was clicking links. I had 17 pages open. I was going back and forth. I was reading stuff. I was reading up I remember this card. I used to have this card. Who is Limdal the Necromancer? And I read up on his history, and I read up on the histories of everything else, and I read the intertwined stories. They're coming up with some very interesting stories. It kind of surprised me they haven't put it into like a RPG style format. They've kept it as the card game, pure and simple. I can kind of dig that, I suppose. But I was reading about some of the worlds, and I believe everyone who's played Magic the Gathering knows the Sarah Angel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a classic card. It's some of its abilities are now keyworded. It's that integral to the system. And so I was reading up, who is Sarah? What is up with these angels? And I read about that. And Sarah was a planeswalker. She had her own plane. And what was it like? Well, there was a bunch of, wonderful little, fields floating in a wonderful, ever morning sky. And I was thinking about planes that way, and I started working up like different cosmologies and different potential realities and all that stuff. And then it occurred to me, you know what? Yes, I am a nerd. I'm just a different nerd than I was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in the course of all...
You're reassured?
A little reassured. I would like to finish off the book sometime before next Tuesday, just to keep my high nerd cred status up, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But by and large, I'm satisfied with the nerd I've become.
I see.
I'm imagining worlds I couldn't have done 15, 14 years ago. And so that was my trek across fantasy and fiction this week.
Well, very good.
How about you?
This week, lots of stuff. I rewatched the Dungeons and Dragons episode of Community, season 5, the second. It's Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Too advanced. I didn't repeat my words there. That was such a good episode. I really enjoyed it. I don't know what else to say about that. It's very good.
It's good enough to bear repeat watching.
Yes, so I watched that again. I played Minecraft. Did I mention last time we met that I was moving in my main Minecraft world, my single player world? I'm moving to the bottom of the world near Bedrock. I
have heard that's a lot of fun to do, is just to start your own subterranean existence.
Yeah, and I've built a tree farm down there so that I don't have to go to the surface to get wood.
So have you moved the animals down properly?
I have some cows. I haven't done any other animals, just cows and horses. So I have a horse that I can get up and down with. And my goal is to build all of the stuff that I need to survive, with bedrock as the floor. So it's the level where the bedrock just peaks out. So it's not
going to all be bedrock, because that's almost impossible to find statistically.
Yeah, exactly.
But you will have this wonderful speckling of bedrock in and amongst your wonderful little... Can I call it a bunker? Are you building a bunker, Josh?
It might be. I mean, it might actually be bigger than a bunker.
Some of those bunkers back in the 50s were pretty luxuriously sized.
I guess so,
I believe there is a movie or two based on that, one of which, Blast from the Past, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
With Brendan Fraser?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very young Brendan Fraser at the start of his career, sort of like, not Encino Man start, but still the start of his career.
Yeah.
So give it a look up if you want to see how good some of those bunkers could have been.
Yeah, or what was it called, a fallout shelter maybe?
Fallout shelter, fallout bunkers, they were all hodgepodge together.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be like a complex, I guess. Like.
So can I make a request then that you get some sheep, some proper coloration? You build yourself a rather large circular chamber and make a false rocket so that you can launch and start the nuclear war?
Make a rocket. Maybe.
It's just a wool rocket. It's only design.
I can't promise anything.
Some TNT in the inside there, and just like on command, like send it. Oh no, misfire! Boom.
Well, maybe.
You do that, and you set the whole thing up for a view, and let people watch. As you got Minecraft rocket explosion. You get your views that way.
Maybe, yeah.
There you go.
I have found that building down that low is kind of difficult, though, because the lava is above me, like, the lava level.
Well, that's why you have to figure out just exactly where your missile silo is going to wind up being, and then you got to work down from there and then just plug up as you go.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more work, but it saves you from boiling in lava, and that's always its own reward, really.
I suppose that a rocket could be my final thing that I do for that project, because eventually I'm gonna have enough things, and I'll be like, oh, okay, I'm tired of this, and move on to another area of the world. So maybe,
fair enough. I mean, that's the thing that's the fun thing about Minecraft is that it never lasts forever. Not everything. You always go and do something new again. Start off fresh.
Yeah.
So that was your big thing in this week then? Decide to become a hermit recluse bunker maker?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that basically is. I'm trying to remember if I did any other gaming. I'm sure I did, but I forget now. So
there we go. Well, here's the thing: don't think of a bunker as just being like a recluse sort of thing. Think of it as just an advanced start on trying some Dwarf Fortress stuff. Everybody eventually takes all the cows underground in Dwarf Fortress.
Oh, yeah.
It happens. Don't know why, but that's just how it goes. So I suppose we should go on to a main topic then for us today.
So, are we going to talk about board games since we are at the Board Game Cafe?
I think it is one of the better ideas for this week. Not that we're always short on ideas, but I think it very much fits the theme with the sound of dice and blocks and all that rolling behind us. I got to say, I came on in here. I'm looking for you just to make sure, I'm not too late. You didn't leave in a huff sort of thing, because I was late today. There was a mix-up in dates, and I'm normally bad anyways for getting anywhere on time. But what caught my eye as I'm walking by was the Small World board game. I quite liked it. I do believe Interactivity sponsored, or at least donated a few of their copies of Small World during the GodaCon.
Yes, in Victoria, British Columbia, February.
Which is where I learned to play Small World. My brother said, dude, you got to play this. And he sat me and my other brother down and, dude, we got to play that.
Yeah.
And we did, and we learned it, and I liked it.
Yeah, I played Small World here the last time I was here in Interactivity.
And it just suddenly struck me at just how much of a different game it is, especially with a theme for games than it usually is. Like, Monopoly's 100 years old, give or take, right?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
It is very much a grandfather of board games.
Yeah.
And yet you wouldn't imagine that one being on shelf sort of thing. It's just like, anyone want to sit down and play a rousing game of Monopoly? Not without some rules to cut down the time short. You don't want to be sitting here, from like afternoon till closing time. Because a game of Monopoly realistically can go on that long. Mm-hmm. But the Small World is specifically designed 7 turns, 11 turns, depending on how many people you're playing with. How long you want it to go.
Yep.
And I think that's an interesting way to look at games, the classic old ones versus the new designed ones.
Yeah, well, Monopoly is technically designed, but I suppose,
it wasn't designed to the same levels and specifications. I
don't have an answer to this, but I do wonder if Monopoly invented going around the outside of the board? Because I think before that there was Chutes and Ladders, which went back and forth, right?
Well, yeah, you have your continual around versus your to the end point sort of thing. And a lot of games went for either an end point or keep cycling around until you get all what you need and then hit the end point. I believe some of the old ones like Candyland and some of those Barbie ones work the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it actually designed the around, because if you want to get technical with it, Mancala, which is like 10, 15,000 years old, had a keep going around sort of style to it. Although you were only allowed to control half of the board, which is a very interesting concept. I would like to see played out.
Mm-hmm.
Like a nice board game where it's a two-person sort of thing, and each person controls half the board. You can send your units over onto like the other side of the battle or whatever, but after they go there, it's just automatic. You don't get a chance to stage up an invasion or anything like
that. Stratego? Is it Stratego? Stratego.
I've always
that one doesn't work that way, does it?
No. Although, depending on how the other person designs their layout, a lot of people will take like the bombs that can only be stopped by the one weak unit, and they'll put them up front to create like an impenetrable thing, and then they'll wind up cycling back and forth with the the most powerful to the least powerful to try and stop anyone who's going through.
Okay.
There's some interesting designs on there. I believe there's been a few people studying different things, like which works best. Like what's the best way to go about things. Like, well, there's some people that say, you don't actually put all the bombs up front. What you do is you put like half of them up front, and then that way the person tries to go in on the side, and you put the bombs randomly scattered throughout in, and people go through, and boom, there they go.
Mm-hmm. I'd imagine the only truly universal strategy would be a random distribution of bombs, unless you can sort of predict where your opponent wants to go, like what their style is, and then you can probably place the bombs. But if you don't know where your opponent's going to go, it's probably fine just to do random.
To build up that barricade wall to force them in, to funnel their efforts, and then you strike them out through whatever.
But anyways, controlling.
Does Connect 4 count as the same as like a cycling through, going around and around? Because that's not exactly a quick game, and you usually wind up playing about 7 or 8 games in a row. Best 2 out of 3, best 3 out of 5, and then once you get like the Connect 4 in a row, you win, and you let all the pieces fall to the bottom, and you start over again.
Yeah, so it's like a vertical circle.
More vertical rather than a horizontal motion sort of thing.
I don't know. I'm picturing a very defined in my brain. I mean, obviously, if we depart from what I have in my brain, then we can almost go anywhere. But I'm picturing that sort of square Monopoly board with a strip along all 4 edges of it that you move like one piece at a time. I mean, I don't know. That mechanic probably wasn't invented by Monopoly, but I wonder if
although they really did make it their own sort of thing by making the groups like you can set up so that rather than it always being the same sort of squares every time, you purchase the square, and then that way this square is now hostile to anyone else. I think they were the ones who effectively allowed you to change the feel of the board game by, I guess, trapping the other squares. As if you want to take a look at it, you could wind up making a board game where you've got people setting traps for each other as you go around, like a Mario Kart board game, I suppose, or thing where you leave traps behind.
You could have basically resource management on a board game. That's kind of
I can dig that. But it's a very much a different style than something like Settlers of Catan, where you reshuffle the board every time.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Monopoly if you shuffled all the tiles and then you randomly inserted them around the board?
Interesting. I can imagine that. I think that would be kind of fun. But also, sort of thinking about the simulationist aspect of it, which people often don't do with Monopoly, but often expensive properties are usually grouped together, right? And an expensive property tends to raise the value of nearby properties. That's
Anarcho-Monopoly, where you've got keep in mind, technically, just after you hit Boardwalk, you take a turn around the corner, and then you're in the slums.
That's true.
So if you want to look at it, that first line on the Monopoly board there is effectively, the ghetto area, and that's just a back alley behind Boardwalk and Park Place.
Also, you'd think the higher property values should have lower density, right?
So well, that's why there's only 2 of them at the very end.
Okay.
And there's a bit of an urban, renewal. That's why there's only 2 of them for the cheap ones too. I'm going to state. I'm just making this up. But there's only one way to go around the board. If you were to work it in a current sort of style, with a game design, there'd be at least a back alley sort of thing. So you'd have instead of where the railways are, you could branch which way you're going. You always have to keep going effectively in a clockwise sort of pattern. But you're always you can choose different ways. I'm going to avoid this area. This is not a good area of town for me. Mm-hmm. And so instead of a person buying up a Monopoly set and now you'll always potentially land. It's no, I take the detour. I go off that way.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Also, it sounds a bit more complicated, which people don't.
More properties allows you to play Monopoly even longer before someone goes broke. Hooray!
Actually, didn't they do that? People have put together 4 Monopoly boards together.
I do recall hearing about a thing where they got 4 Monopolies, each different languages, and then each was a different country, and then you had to convert your currency every time you passed go and went to another country as you flew, and landed in a different nation.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that idea.
I do like that. That is a lot more complicated, though. I don't believe they actually worked with a conversion rate or anything, because that would have been pretty darn complex there.
Because I was thinking to myself, the doubles mechanic, you get to go twice if you roll doubles.
But you rolled 3 times in a row and off to jail.
Well, exactly.
Too lucky.
And I was thinking, what does that sort of represent in the game? And does that maybe represent something like taking a shortcut? If you roll doubles, you find a sewer grate that you can sneak through and roll again to see where you end up. And then if you sneak through too many back alleys, then, bad things happen.
Well, let's just see here for the quick math. The chance of rolling doubles on dice is be 6 out of 36 for your odds. So that's a 1 in 6 chance of getting an opportunity to go twice, which I think is actually a fairly reasonable set of odds, right?
Okay, sure.
And then they say if you do it 3 times in a row, you go to jail. So that's 1 in 6 to the third, so 1 in 216. That's officially too lucky. So if anyone asks you, how lucky is too lucky, you say if the odds are greater than 1 in 2, equal to or greater than 1 in 216.
Okay.
Because according to Monopoly, there's your odds for it happening.
Yeah. All right.
In which case, you could even look at it from a computing standpoint. In that case, is what happens, if you go over 255 in the old games where they only hold, 256 values? Well, because they have to use 0 as a value, it cycles back to 0. So in this case, your luck is so good, it loops and go around the horn, and all of a sudden you're back into bad luck. Go to jail, buddy. Now, what if they had worked it with a different sort of thing? If you rolled doubles, you got to go, again. But if you rolled 7, any which way you roll 7, it's an automatic, go back to go or something, or go back to the nearest corner square.
Okay.
Would that work for you? Is this a nice way to penalize, this random chance as well as reward this random chance?
7 is the most common thing to
but
roll.
It's only a 1 in 6 chance as well. And because the 7 is odd, there's no way you're going to roll doubles and roll 7.
I hate rolling 7s in Settlers of Catan, though.
Yeah, it does set off that burglar, and that sets off ill will. But that's designed to do so. That's why they made it 7.
I suppose. I think I would get rid of that in Settlers if I could.
So you come up with a house rule that if we can get enough armies all together out on the board, the little robber baron whatever gets removed from the board. It's too lawful a place to house this horrible villain, this figure of larceny.
Yeah, I probably would.
I could buy that. If you get a total of 5 armies out across all the players on the game, the robber's been removed. He's been caught. Whoever puts down that 5th soldier gets him, that counts as a 1 point towards victory.
How about put that robber in the Monopoly game, and then the robber goes into jail and wanders the board, and then every once in a while goes to jail, and then breaks out.
Or what you could have it be is he's the extra player at the end. Once everyone's taken their turn, someone rolls for the robber. He lands on the same square as you. You lose so much cash. He lands on one of your properties. You lose so much cash.
Yeah.
Did you dig that, Dan?
Yeah, that'd be fun. Although again, it's complicated and
elongates the game a little bit.
Or it could unintentionally break a person a little quicker, sort of thing. I'm just at the edge, but if I roll right, I can make it past your long double Monopoly on this edge of the board. I can make it if I just roll right. And then, there goes the robber. Tick, 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 tick. And now you're broke.
Actually, that's kind of a good point, because one of the reasons why Monopoly gets drawn out the way it does and unfun is because people get too many bonuses and too much bonus cash.
It is one of the best reasons to go against the house rule of any time you have to pay taxes, it goes in the center, you land on free parking, collect everything there.
It makes the game last forever.
Okay, what if you wanted to start working it differently for Monopoly, and instead of collecting $200 as you pass go, you have to pay taxes? That whole that property taxes sort of thing that they've got in between Boardwalk and Park Place, that's just a blank square now. Anytime you pass go, you effectively trigger that effect. I don't know. I think Monopoly is generally pretty balanced if you just play by the rules, but every time you pass go, you're adding $200 into the system, and the only way the money leaves the system is by purchasing property. First property and then housing on it. Those are the only two ways to remove money from the system. So if people don't build up fast enough, quick enough to drain the money out of someone else, everything will build up and they'll take too many turns around. Everyone will have enough money in the system. You'll have to win them out through $10, through the taxes, or hitting the one square, pay 10%, or $200. Your choice.
That's actually kind of interesting. I don't know if that's true, but that would be really cool if you could play.
If you have too many conservative players, I don't know if I'll wind up purchasing the property. Maybe next time I go around. If you get too many people doing that, instead of people blowing out most of their money, say 75%, I think is what they recommend, on properties as soon as possible, then it starts being that too many people go around, $200 keeps adding into the system, and before you know it, everyone's too rich to go broke.
And they just rent each other's properties forever.
And that's why Monopoly will kill you eventually.
Okay.
It will kill you, or you will kill someone else. It's just the nice jab that they like to poke at Monopoly. It's not designed to take the money out of the system. If it was like one of the MMOs out there, it would be considered a very badly designed game. WoW is always trying to find a way to bleed gold out of the economy. Oh yes, 10,000 for this wonderful lucrative mount, for the training, for this, get this special effect, get this nice little transmogrification cost in there. It's always designed to bleed a little bit of gold out of the system so that nobody gets too rich.
Yeah.
Monopoly doesn't have that, especially not to the same degree, and doubly so when you start putting in the home rules of taxes go to the center. And that's one of the interesting things about it, is that Monopoly is an organically designed game, so it's not anywhere near what anyone could finger quote describe as perfect.
Okay.
And so, I mean, you could set up a rule that if you've got, so a person crosses go and they've got $10,000 in value, that, it starts being that no one gets $200 as they pass go, it starts being you have to pay $200. You got to start removing money from the system to make things get heightened. That's not something you see in the modern games. They're all designed to say, it's like, okay, we're going to intentionally make sure this lasts about a half hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour. After that, the game should be resolved. Now, Settlers of Catan is a bit of a break from that, admittedly, in that it can go so slow. It could be 2 hours if everyone's fighting each other, just so aggravated against each other. I believe the game Zombies works the same way. If everyone's playing together, it's a nice quick, maybe 20 minutes sort of game before everyone manages to make it. If you had a little house rule, if everyone can make it to the helicopter pad, one after another, then they all get to go. Anyone, not able to make it after, that one skip turn, well, they get left behind. So sorry. Mm-hmm. But if you're playing against each other, no one's ever going to win. It's going to be so many zombies in between your way, so many zombies moving on top of you every time. No one has any hope of winning. It's just a zombie apocalypse.
Okay.
In which case, I think it's a very interesting thing. I mean, if you want to ever play that with me, I'm willing to roll a die. Evens we play together, odds we try and go head-to-head, fighting each other along the way.
Yes.
That said, if we're going head-to-head fighting each other, I don't want to play the blue character. I have a role-playing character with the blue guy, and I want to keep my little guy alive as he goes through various zombie apocalypses.
Okay.
Playing together with my blue character, I have never lost him. He's never died.
Okay, but you've lost with other colors.
Well, yeah, we were playing head-to-head, and that's when I realized, it's like, oh, what's a good thing I didn't choose blue. My little guy, I had a name for him and everything. I had a role, what he does, how he helps out. It's purely above and beyond. I'm just that kind of nerd. Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, it's a different one. So if I'm going to play head-to-head against you, I'm going to have to request I get first choice of color and characters. I'll play red or something, I don't know.
Okay.
So there we go. What do you think about the old games? Like, Risk is not designed for a time limit. I mean, there was even an episode of Seinfeld where they're playing it for days on end without any conclusive victor, and it only really ends when somebody just flips the board.
Yeah.
How dare you make you mock the Ukraine? I flip the board.
Well, it's been a long time since I've actually played Risk, but I loved it when I was younger, and I didn't get to play too many full games, but I had a friend, I must have been 12 or 13 when I was playing Risk, and like the physical board game.
In that case, you do have a copy at your place, right?
Yeah.
In that case, tell you what, the next time we're recording at your spot, before we actually do that, we'll play a game of Risk. Hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, it won't take that long. And then we'll get your review on that, your updated review, now that you're much more, adult and mature, and you can think about it in different ways you could when you were a teenager.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Find out how much it's changed your perspective, because let's face it, we all view the games of our youth through rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah.
Everyone liked playing Monopoly when they were young, because, hey, look at all the money. When you're doing it for 5 hours as a bunch of adults, and darn it, you just wanted a nice little way to pass the early afternoon, the game takes on a different tone.
Yeah, and I played it on computer later on in various, for the Apple...
the various Apple systems. Back before they got really cool.
And also I had a copy on the Sega Genesis. And it wasn't the same because... the Risk, it was always numbers instead of actually moving the little pieces.
There is a nice tactile sense that way, I will admit.
Yeah.
When you've got everyone piled up and you swarm outwards, you've got your Australian base and you're getting those 2 units every turn, and you're just doing a little pick-off here just to get the one card to turn in, a little pick-off there to get the one turn in, and you build up your forces, and they keep taking your zone back, and then all of a sudden you've got 100 guys. So much, you need to bring in a second color, and then you swarm out, and you have your I like to call it the Australian apocalypse in this case, whereas because you've got your own little mini continent with only one way in, one way out, you just kill everything as you just expand out in your wonderful attack plan.
Wow, it's never gone that way for me.
Oh. We probably play a little different styles. It'll be an interesting head-to-head for us then. But there's another thing, is Australia is heavily defensible. Only one way in, only one way out.
Yeah.
You can effectively hole up in Australia for the first half of the game, build up your units, let everyone else whittle themselves out until there's 1-2 guys fairly weak against each other.
Okay.
And then out you go as you take out everyone.
I don't think I ever played with more than maybe 4.
It is rather hard to get 5 other players together.
Yeah.
It is a lot of fun, though. I have tried it. I have enjoyed it. Rather hard to build up any big defensible stuff until you knock 1 or 2 people off. But here's why I like playing Risk more in person, is because you can make some really nice deals you can't make through a computer simulation. You can betray deals you can't make through a computer simulation.
Yeah.
So you can say to a person that's he's got all of the Americas under his belt. If we don't force ourselves against him, we're never going to win. He's going to overrun us with his sheer numbers. So you take North America, I'll take South America. I'll attack through Africa, and then we'll split his empire between the two of us. And, if it goes well for you and you manage to take out South America before you can take out all of North America, you just expand out. Our time for a treaty has come to an end, my friend. This is where we separate the wheat from the chaff. and then you take both the North Americas, and you've also got the African continent while you started off with the whole thing. So now you own half the world. You're the new threat because you're treacherous.
Yeah, I've done that.
And it's one of the best fun parts of the game, and I don't think they have anything quite like that in some of the newer games. The ability to just completely backstab your friends and then become the overwhelming onslaught.
Yeah.
Have you tried Risk 2210?
No.
Oh. It's an interesting game. It's much more clearly designed. There's cards to help wipe away numbers. If you have forces on the moon, because in 2210 you can own the moon.
Okay.
You can do orbital bombardments, which basically says all those units on Earth, on each territory, remove half of them. You basically just drop bombs across the planet.
Oh yeah.
There's not just one way into and out of Australia. They have, aquatic baseland areas, which is, I guess, kind of like Atlantis, but futuristic and all that.
Yeah.
So instead of going through Australia through the peninsula sort of thing, through the Vietnam area and all that, you can take the water route. You can go in through the water route the other way. It's much more connected in. It is much. You can tell it's much more designed. That said, it is a lot more complex. It is only supposed to go for 5 turns. Because, boy, if you thought the original games were long, this one will take forever. Especially if you got the wrong or right people with you, depending how you want to look at it.
Okay, yeah.
I swear, I played with one guy. It would take him half an hour to do his turn, and he'd only do 3 things. He considered every potential option before doing almost nothing. So, maybe a timer wouldn't be a bad addition for a house rule. Your turn has to take only 10 minutes. Just like a thing on chess. You can't take too long, buddy.
All right. Yeah.
So here's a concept for you. Is which do you like naturally better? The more designed games, the more intelligently and thought out games of the current era versus the classics, where you can get overpowered and completely swamp, or you can get yourself stuck in this infinite loop of no one wins.
I think I generally prefer the modern, our era worth of games.
And do you think that's because it's intelligently designed, or just because of some of the mechanics they've got in there? Like the shuffle your board up when you start sort of thing of Settlers of Catan.
Yeah.
Or as you were telling me about Galaxy Truckers, how everyone has their own board. As opposed to everyone works on one board, you also get your own board in addition to that.
Yeah, although I think that was a different game I might be thinking of. But anyways,
but it's still an innovative concept. It's something completely different. You have your own board.
Yeah, you have your own spaceship. I think it's Galaxy or Space. It might be Galaxy. Anyways, yeah.
So, do you like it for the innovation design? Do you like it because it's intelligently designed to only last so long, not have the overwhelming, now we have to keep playing, but there's no way we're going to win sort of stance some of the older games have?
I like both of those things. I don't know.
So ideally, you would design a board game that allows you to, be fairly fair, but under the right circumstances, completely overwhelm and overpower the opponents? Playing a nice old chess game where you completely demolish the other guy. Everyone started up fair, but you're so much better a chess player. He wiped out his unit. You've still got 3/4 of your forces. He's down to 2 pawns and a king.
Well, that can happen in chess.
That can very much happen. It doesn't usually happen. It usually whittles down a little bit more evenly. Ideally, you should be playing against someone of your own skill level. That said, you can win in 3 turns with the Queen's Gambit sort of thing. Nobody loses. Only one unit gets lost, and then it's checkmate, game over.
There is a possibility of that if your opponent.
If everything goes completely wrong for the one poor sucker, and that's how it ends.
Yeah.
So I guess then chess is the nice middle ground where you start off even, everything should be okay, but you can wind up completely thrashing the other guy and being so overpowered you have no chance but winning.
And I suppose, what's that mechanic called? The balancing mechanic in Mario Kart, when if you're behind you get
You get boosted. You get a speed boost.
Yeah, you do get a little speed boost, and there's a much more greater likelihood of getting a bonus item, like a thing that'll wind up hitting the guy up in front.
Okay.
So whoever's in last is likely to get the blue shell.
I don't know how I feel about that.
You prefer it to be a pure skill, not just like, oh, you are doing so horrible. Here's a sympathy token for you.
Yeah, I don't know.
The game is going to unfairly weight itself in your advantage just because you are so poor a player. I always found that a little insulting myself. But you know what? Sometimes you need that help.
Yeah,
what if it was an option you could turn off, sort of thing? It's like hardcore mode versus fun for all.
I suppose if I had the option of turning it off, I think most of the time I'd leave it on.
Interesting.
Especially because when I play Mario Kart, I'm playing with like kids and with
it is supposed to be
parents,
fun for all, so that way it is supposed to like get back into the game.
Yeah, nobody's really good at that game. Well, there's usually like the guy who plays it all night.
The guy who does the Rainbow Road and winds up like banking himself off a moon to jumping off the areas and making sure exactly where to land. So he goes from 8th to 1st in 30 seconds.
There's usually someone like that. But then, so there's, I suppose, when there's a vast disparity of skill levels and people who don't match up, I think, I think that mechanic works.
Would you like to see a mechanic like that in chess then?
I guess not, because chess is not that kind of, you don't play it just in a casual, well, some people play it casually, but you don't necessarily, like, it's not the game that the family breaks out and let's all have a family game.
I used to do that with my dad. Well, and then I lost a lot of the pieces because I was young and stupid.
Yeah, you play with, like, you and your dad, and then he's teaching you, but sort of the intended, that'd be a
it is something
I
am going to make sure to spend the money, get a nice, like one of those 21 board game things. But I do want to sit down, play nice games with my daughter, get her to learn the game, get her to learn the system, and just hang out and see where she's developing, how quickly she's learning tricks and skills in a system. Because I got to say, looking back at myself, I was pretty stupid when I was young. I would fall for the same trick every time. I don't know why, but c'est la vie. That's how it went. I'd like to see if my daughter is wily and cunning. Fingers crossed.
Okay, hopefully. I see that sort of, the parent playing with the kid, especially with chess. It's true that it is basically recreational, but it's also educational. It's also intended to get the kid to hone their skills so that ideally in the future they could take on other opponents, like in a more competitive environment.
To some degree. I mean, I'm fairly certain my dad was holding back his A game playing against me.
Okay.
He was playing. Well, I mean, I've seen him play against computers, and like he can basically say, "What pieces do you want left on the board for which sides?" and he'll get it down to that. But back in the 70s, before the internet, before all the electronic video games, on a weekend he'd just pick up a loaf of bread, go to his friend's house, they'd make toast and play chess all day. So yeah, my dad is good. My dad has put in the hours to become good enough at chess. He can work himself around an electronic chess game.
Okay.
Maybe not Deep Blue or anything, but you know what? He was holding back on me. So how much I learned from that, or like you could say that I was learning as best as I could, or you could say my dad was coddling me, and thus when I went out to play games of chess against other people, thinking I'm the hot young whiz, I get completely wiped off the board because my dad was holding back. He wasn't taking a moment to stomp me down every once in a while just to show what he could do.
Do you know that for sure, for a fact?
I'm not a betting man, but I would put money on it. My dad is a very nice man and a very kind man.
Yeah.
And I've seen him play chess. He is above and beyond what I can do.
Okay.
I would like to get back at it, maybe find a nice free online chess game and play it myself. Get back in the groove.
Yep.
But most of the ones I find are timed, and I'm not a big fan of timed chess. Not at this stage of my development. But so I suppose if chess is an interesting mix between everyone starts fair and talent determines who wins. Would you like to see more of rules like that instituted in more of the modern games, where you can wind up demolishing a person through sheer skill? Because even in Settlers of Catan, you can start off, or about even. Everyone gets like the 2 units of road and the 2 little villages. You can start off a little bit better placed, more likely to get those units.
Yeah.
But it's still, a bit of a fight to get that dominance where you've got like the 8 points and everyone else has got 2, and first to 10 wins. So, haha.
I think I can't generalize for all games. I think if it's intended to be a more casual, like just game for families or
where it's this thing where everyone has a good chance throughout. There's been a few times there's been a person at 8 points, I've been at 5, and I still came from behind for a victory. It's never been a foregone conclusion. I never accepted defeat.
I'm trying to think of
the person with 8 was my brother, and he plays harsh, so he gains enemies. I just kept playing happy, and everyone was going against him, and then I sneaked myself into a 10-point win.
Oh yeah.
Which is an interesting strategy in and of itself, playing against the character types you're at the table with.
Yeah. I think some games will have like a little bonus for the last place person sometimes.
Would you like to come up with a list of house rules on that sort of thing?
What do you mean?
Like a house rule that if you are the poorest person in Monopoly, once around the board you get a chance to hop an extra square ahead. So if you would have landed on boardwalk sort of thing, use your 1 point skip ahead, your speed boost for being the last player to go to go land on go, get your $200 instead.
Maybe for advanced. Although if you're playing Monopoly enough to want advanced rules, then you're also probably not in need of balancing mechanics, because you're not going to be playing that with beginners, unless you bring beginners into your table, like your house. Maybe.
That's an interesting thing though, because a lot of people I've played with, they are not beginners, and yet they still use the house rule of tax money goes to the center.
Yeah, I don't know why people use that.
I think it's just so common, a house rule. A lot of people don't even think of it as a house rule. They just think of it as a rule.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just learn it as that's how you play.
You could work up a lot of interesting house rules to do a come from behind sort of, I don't lose quite that way. On the other hand, you can see the person being last in Monopoly, avoiding that extra pay to knock them out as being another way to prolong the damage. And so I think if you're going to design a house rule to have a person in behind not prolong the entire length of the game, you're going to have to still think of the short-term and long-term effects of it.
Yeah, I think your idea is along the correct lines, in that like a jump forward isn't necessarily going to infuse a lot of cash into the game. It's just going to give them a little non-cash advantage.
It can keep them going a little bit longer. Instead of getting knocked out early, they can, 1 spot ahead, then I only have to, pay so much for landing on, I guess in this case I'll just make it up and say, I land on a railroad instead. I only pay $25 instead of the $150 for the hotel on this spot.
Yeah.
Aha. And that allows them to get around to the go, another $200 into the game system.
It might be interesting if, just different characters, I was thinking, other mechanics you could do with dice is just, instead of you have to move the whole, whatever you roll, if you roll an 8, you have to move 8, you could just either take just one die, or even just any number up to the 8. So
that allows for some very slow motion going on in the game, and then people effectively just hopping and trying to avoid it. Taking everyone moves only in groups of 1, or 2, or 3, 4 as they go to the next safe spot.
Well, that's why I was thinking, what if the shoe, because the shoe is all about, that soft stepping and, stepping in the right place.
All right.
So what if the shoe, although did the shoe get retired, or the iron get retired?
I think the iron got retired.
Okay, so the shoe is still in. So, yeah.
One of the two's out.
Something like you get special abilities if you're the shoe.
So each unit has its own class ability.
Yeah.
So if you're playing the battleship, you land on a person's property, and you can say, I bombard you. You now have no property effectively while I'm there. You can utilize what I paid for rent for repairs. It comes back online once I've left the square.
Or maybe if you have a battleship and you land on a square with a house or a hotel, you pay the value of that hotel and
it goes back
demolish
into the bank. Houses cost this. I will pay that value. You lose it. It goes in. I've bombarded you. I kind of like that one. It's an interesting way of freeing up more stuff, because there is a point in the game, towards the later game, where you run out of houses and hotels, and that is by design. They didn't want it so everyone could have hotels on every square.
Yeah. Well, again, it's part of that. They don't want the game to get prolonged.
In which case, they've badly designed the game if that was their original intent, because the game will go on for hours on end sometimes.
Yeah. So I think my proposed house rule there probably wouldn't be very balanced, but at least it's fun to think about.
It does free things up, because then the next person who didn't get the opportunity, like, I got the property, I just wasn't able to get enough cash to build up as I want, and now, because I have to build evenly, I'd have to rearrange all my houses to build up here or there. Oh, but no, if 3 spots opened up, I will use my advantage. It's my turn, I snap up the house, and now I've got the house there.
And you could pay the battleship to pay that player.
You land on my place, no rent. For the next 2 times you land on my properties, if you demolish their houses, so when you land on that one. The kind of deals you can't make with a computer. I kind of like that. So in that case, would the cat get an opportunity to re-roll? The cat's the new one that got brought in that replaced
the cat has like 9 lives or something, or...
Alright. Once per time around, the car gets the opportunity to roll a 3rd die, because it's, in overdrive.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Sure.
Make up some fun, little weird house rules on this. Or you could say that it could only roll 1 die instead of rolling the 2, and that's like on the brakes or just in first gear.
Yeah. Sure.
It's got opportunities. So you think those? What would be the rule for the iron if it was still in the game?
The iron flattens things out, it gets rid of wrinkles, it launders money. If you could launder money, I don't know, you could pay less taxes.
Case, you don't pay taxes when you're the iron because you're laundering your money. I can dig that. That seems like an interesting enough house rule. People get a good chuckle out of that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch, but...
Some of the best fun house rules are a bit of a stretch.
Maybe it irons out some of the cards, so you only pay half of the penalties on the chance cards or something like that.
Oh, irons out the wrinkles in your budget. It doesn't cost any extra to unmortgage your properties.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, maybe add a whole bunch of little things. You get to choose from a list. Which ones are? What kind of an iron are you? Or maybe just we couldn't think of anything else. The iron gets $300 when it goes past go instead of $200. Sorry.
Yeah.
Which brings us to another game, Sorry.
Okay, alright.
That's an interesting game where you play cards. Depending on what cards you play, you could wind up going like from start, backing up, and then going forward, and wind up getting... You could, under very unlikely circumstances, finish the game in very little time by getting out, and then you go back 1, go back 4, back up enough that way you'll go straight to the home zone where you're safe, and then you got all your units in there. All you have to do is wait for the proper number to come up for you, and bam, in you go.
Yeah, okay.
Very unlikely. I've played Sorry a couple times, more than a couple times, and the chances of that happening are very slim.
That's another one where you go around the edge of the board.
Yes. It does have some nice quick ahead sort of thing. You land on this square, you zoom ahead to the end, and you knock off the person at the end, and that's when you declare sorry, although you're not really sorry at all. It's a very basic board game design. There's not a heck of a lot to it. It's not really meant to simulate any part of real life. Small World is a fantasy world simulator sort of thing.
Yeah.
Monopoly is a bunch of people owning properties across, I guess, the United States. I think it's all supposed to be in the U.S., right?
Yeah, it's like New Jersey or something.
New Jersey, New York, in the various railroads, which of course take you out of town. Whereas Sorry is so very, very abstract. It doesn't really represent anything in reality to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah.
I wonder if that makes it a better or worse game then. What's your opinion on that one, Josh? How like the games that are so completely abstract? Like let's compare this to a Mancala, one of the oldest games in the world. Mm-hmm. You've got a series of divots and you move stones around, and you want to try and get more stones in your one side than the other guy gets in his one side.
Okay. Yeah.
What does that represent in real life? Not really much of anything at all.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
So in that case,
counting beans.
Yeah, it's the best you can get out of that is it helps you to count numbers and spatial, number, like how far will this take me around the system. So in that case, it's a very abstract game as well. Are these games better because they're not connected to something in reality? It's like, oh, there's no way, my car would get knocked off in this case because I'm doing this sort of style, or there's no way the Baron would ever, the robber Baron would ever try and attack my little nation state or whatever it is in Settlers of Catan because I've got so many soldiers.
Yeah.
In that case, because you can argue in a game that connects to the real world as a point of like it would never realistically happen this way. Mm-hmm. Whereas the abstract games, you can't argue from that basis. So does that make them better in that case, or does it make them weaker because you can't relate?
I like a game with a story. I always have like games that you can sort of say this is what's happening, and this is a little man, and this is his little wife, and they're walking around in a field, and yeah. And I was thinking, Mancala, like, wouldn't that be like dividing up like grains among like sacks or something? Like if you had a certain amount of sacks and you had to put grain in each one or something. Like maybe it represents something, but we
slightly. It's
lost.
So very far removed from anything we do in this day and age.
Yeah,
because it goes back to Stone Age, finds. So it's the start of the agriculture. Or maybe it was just something to pass the time until sunset, and okay, now you go to bed.
Well, I'd imagine like it's probably related to the original, like the origins of accounting, because you would use. I mean, calculus comes from the word stone, calculus means little rock.
Yeah.
And because they used to do accounting with little stones.
In that case, maybe Mancala is abstract to you and me because we don't work with the abacus. If we knew the abacus, we could see how it relates back and forth then.
Something like that. I don't know how closely an abacus...
We're just missing that one piece of classic technology to say, oh, Mancala is totally a microcosm of existence as a whole. How could I have missed that?
Well, I'd imagine it might be that, but it might just be that it's sort of a way for the kids learning, counting in. I guess they didn't go to school in those days, but
schools didn't exist back then.
They're learning how to count and how to move stones and how to track, because it's dawn of agriculture. They're tracking bags of grain or something.
So, or it could just be that someone, or it could just be like, okay, let's just come up with a quick, simple game while the pot's on the boil. And it's going to take so long before all our grains are cooked, so we'll just get some stones, and I'll move them this way on this side, you move them that way on that side, one at a time. Whoever has the most at the far end, wins.
Well, and imagine this world where they have the nation accountants, and they're sort of getting competitive about, I'm a better counter than you are. No, I'm a better counter. And then how do you settle who's the best at counting with the
math test. Whoever finishes first with the highest degree of accuracy wins.
Or you could
take and even weight
devise a game.
Or you could weight it out so that the score squared times by add to the time limit or the remainder of how much time you have left over squared, and then you take the square root of that, and that gets you an aggregate number. And whoever's got the best of those two aggregate numbers, so that you have the most amount of free time left over, and the highest accuracy winds up winning it.
I don't know if they did too much squaring and square roots in those
And then
days.
They weren't the best accountants, were they?
Well, for their time, I'm saying.
In that case, who's the best accountant? The guy that comes with the new branch of mathematics.
Okay. I wonder.
There's your ultimate test.
I wonder if we have accounting games. I mean, we have math games, right? Math competitions nowadays, right?
Yeah. Whoever works out the two sets of numbers quickest winds up winning. In which case, it winds up also going to who's got the quickest hand to write down the answer and hit the buzzer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what happens in that case is everyone writes down the answer, hits the buzzer first, and then they go through whoever rang through first. Because, you know, you can come up with the right answer a half second after the guy who came up with the wrong answer, you still win. But you don't want to spill the beans by who's got the right number, right? So, but yeah, I mean, the human nature is to come up with a game, just intrinsically. Yep. So I think Mancala, it might be from that. You get two people next to a lake, you're going to come up with a game of who can skip the stone the furthest. Who can get the most skips on it before it plunks into the water, right?
Yeah.
That's a game I think a vast portion of humanity has invented independently in their youth. So I think Mancala might just be something like that stayed.
Yeah, I guess we're only sort of speculating, so
That's pretty hard speculation, I gotta say.
I'm happy with my speculation.
It started off as a primitive, weird accounting bean thing?
Yeah, bean counting.
Okay, it's as good as any explanation for how Mancala started.
Yeah.
But we don't count beans, so it's to us a very abstract game. So do you think the abstractness of it makes it more of a pure game in that case, or does it make it weaker because you can't write? Because I do like the concept of it, like this is how it goes, why that's how it goes. Like checkers, they're supposed to relate to units, but they only move one direction, and you have to make a jump whenever possible. That seems pretty abstract to me. But you know what? That's the rules, and so why are we doing it that way? Because, well, it's checkers. That's how the rules go.
Yeah, why would jumping over somebody... I guess you like maybe ride over them with a horse and like knock them down or something?
Because the best I was able to come with is that if you're all playing on like the same color, right? So you all play on the red square. The black squares are a hollow void. You're like those Shaolin monks jumping from log post to log post. As you jump over someone, smack him in the back of the head, he falls off. He falls into the void. That's the best I've been able to imagine for it myself.
Okay.
And that's a bit of a stretch, because when you get to the end, you get kinged, and so that means you become like a Shaolin master, and you're able to jump in two directions. Woo! I suppose if you want to be now we're not going to advocate you do this, but if you want to get a little spare cash, start a Kickstarter and come up with a Shaolin post game, where all you do is you basically recreate checkers. And instead of the round little checker pieces, you come up with various martial art poses.
Oh, yeah?
These are your guys, and you come up with like different color outfits, and that's it. And then you publish that. You make a lot of money because I've already designed the game for you. All you have to do is make the pieces, put it all together on the board, and sell it.
Cool.
There's your Kickstarter for some spare cash. Not that you advocate it, and I'm going to disavow all responsibility if you get into trouble when someone realizes it's just checkers with a reskin.
Wait, you would get in trouble for that? I don't understand.
Well, you could get into a lot of hot water saying, I'm going to come up with a game to sell to people, and some guy points out, no, you're just trying to ask a lot of money to recreate checkers.
Yeah, but checkers isn't... Like, nobody owns checkers, right?
No, but you're not going to get in legal trouble. You are going to get into a lot of browbeating and a lot of negative publicity sort of thing. Your game could effectively become a toxin. It's like, oh, don't get that. It's just checkers. Don't you see online, man? George Takei put that up there. How dare he try and get away with redesigning a game just by using different colored pieces?
I don't see that happening at all. But okay, yeah.
Well, I'm just disavowing. I don't want to get in. I don't want the podcast to get into any negative press with this. I'm just saying, if you're in a hard spot and you need to make some money, troll for suckers on Kickstarter and make a reskin, checkers. There you go.
Okay. Well, that could almost be its own topic, is a sort of reskinning games like checkers.
Well, I suppose you could take it the other way, too, for a topic. Instead of reskinning it, you just take the outer appearance and work it all together. Blizzard's made a very comfortable living taking, effectively, Warhammer stuff and kidifying it down. The Ultramarines were the original soldiers in blue, not the Terran, classic grunts.
Okay.
So, yeah, might want to put a pin in that one, come back to that another day. Wearing the same costume versus reskinning. Same person in a second costume.
What are they called? The Ultramarines?
The Ultramarines.
Isn't that a color?
It is a color. In the game of the Warhammer 40k, they come from the planet Ultramar.
Okay.
The Ultramarines.
Okay.
It's also a color. They just use a nice, perfect color blue on their warrior outfits, which is a complete topic for another day. Getting away from the board game and into the war game.
Right.
Because that's a whole lot of difference going on there.
So I want to mention that we have, what do we have? We have email.
Yes.
Email us, thesimulationist@gmail.com.
All one word.
We have Facebook, facebook.com/simulationist, and we have, I'm on Twitter at Spaceboot1, that's Spaceboot numeral 1, and YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes. Anytime you see like a little box that you can put a comment or a review, please do leave us some.
We'll even take spam right now. We're cool like that. We'll take spam.
Yeah, spam's good. It can be positive, negative, just how you're doing, anything like that. Ratings, as many as you feel that you want to give us, whether it be stars or.
And if I may point out, we don't have the largest numbers. We are in last place. Maybe give us a boost. Maybe wait unfairly for us. Give us one more star than you think we really deserve.
That's true. Maybe
that's
we
good gaming style design, apparently.
Yes. And with that, I suppose we'll be signing off for this week.
See you guys in one more week.
Yeah, back again, same time, same place.
Same simulation time, same simulationist channel.
The place being your computer. So.
Take care out there.
Take care. I've been Josh Trelevin.
I've been Ryan Kirk.
Okay, and send money.